Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Clan Chattan Association YouTube channel. In place of our regular Wednesdays on the Trail segment, we have a special guest on for Clan Chattan Conversation this evening, and that would be fellow council member John MacPhail. He is also the president of Clan Phail Society. Yes, I know this isn't the month of Clan MacPhail, but that's okay. We got him on, and he has a lot of information, not just about Clan Phail and the Clan Chattan Association, but just some general historical information that I think that you will find very interesting. So come along with us. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Leave a comment down below for myself or for John and for our association. Let us know what else you'd like to learn about. Thank you so much, and we'll see you back here Friday for Cats and Coffee with Ray McCatton. And John has written several books that I'd like for him to talk about as well. So John, let's have you talk a little bit about yourself and your roles over the years with the association, which is how I have met you and we become friends. And then also let's talk about Clan Phail.
Buenos días, ¿cómo está?
Muy bien.
Vale. Hello. It's good to sit down with you for an evening and have a chat. It's rare we actually speak to each other because obviously you live a long way away from where we are, and I live in the York area of England, 200 miles from the Scottish border. So I'm a little bit of a cross, really. I'm a Scottish Yorkshireman with a very Yorkshire accent. So they don't come stranger than that.
I don't think so. And I hear that York is very beautiful. I've always meant to come there and have a look around and experience the hiking trails, but I've never had the opportunity. Maybe this year will be that.
You have to come to York. I mean, if you like history, ancient history, York goes back 2,000 years, if not more. In fact, literally from my house window, literally almost within vision, there's an Iron Age mound, burial mound for people from 4,000 years ago. You know, it's a very old city. I've got a Roman road goes just past my house. It's not obviously a road you can use. It's under the grass, but it's there. And York is a fantastic city, really, if you like history. It's got everything, full city walls all the way around the city, which you can walk on. They're mainly from the Norman period, but there is some Roman walls still left. And then you've got the Great York Minster, which is actually a cathedral. It's not a minster, it's a cathedral. And I think the second biggest in the country. Yeah, York's got a lot of history. If you want to come and see history, York is the place in England to go and see history, definitely. Much easier than seeing it in London. London has the royalty, although, to be fair, York at one period was the capital of England. The king did reside in York for a period, so it was the capital of England for a short period. But definitely come and see York. It's a fantastic place.
Well, and just that you have Roman ruins there as well, because not to get too far, off of the track we wanted to follow today, but Hadrian's Wall and all of that is fascinating. Maybe we can meet here again and talk about that, because that is phenomenal. You're living near all of this wonderful history.
Well, actually, I live literally a field away from the Battle of Stamford Bridge, which isn't the Stamford Bridge in London. It's the Stamford Bridge in Yorkshire, where the famous Viking Saxon battle took place before the king went down to face the Normans and lose down on the south coast. So yeah, literally a field away from where that battle took place.
I should come there and we could film and visit all of these wonderful places if you're down for it, and
Absolutely.
show everyone.
Absolutely. Just let me know when you're coming and I'll give you a guided tour of the whole of York.
That'd be wonderful. So John, tell me, when did you first get involved with the Clan Chattan Association?
Yeah, I was elected onto the council for Clan Chattan Association in 1990, I'm saying 1991, and I've been on the council ever since. So what's that? 33 years now on the council, which is the second longest, because dear Mr. Davidson has been on there longer than myself, and everyone else is a lot younger, I think. So yeah, been on there quite a long time. And what kind of got me into it was that when I was growing up, like a lot of people, a lot of families, when I was growing up, I didn't know any of my family outside of my direct family. I didn't know them. My name is quite unique, as it's got a K in it, which shouldn't really be there. But the lucky thing is, because it's there, it's easy to trace my relatives, because everybody with a K in, spelt with my name, Mackfall, Mackfall, is a direct relative of mine. So it took me 10 years, I would say, to trace the majority of my family, which was quite extensive. It went really from Edinburgh all the way through to Canada and Australia, New Zealand. So there's quite a few spread around. And so I found them all, did the family tree, which is a huge one. I think it's something like about 12 feet wide, the way it's written out. So it was interesting. That got me into it all. So I was literally, before mobile phones and before computers, etc., I was out there going around graveyards, looking at gravestones, reading the church registers, and going through registry offices to find out the details of all my ancestors everywhere. And I managed to trace every single ancestor back, every one, back to 1700. Who they are, where they lived, every one of them, to modern days. So even what jobs they did. So did all of that. And in the meantime, while I was doing all that, whoops, can't really see that from here. You can see it now.
Oh, you had to put it in front of you. Oh,
Wrote that book, which is on my direct family, which kind of highlights the family from its very, very earliest times up to modern day. I've also included clan history in there as well, of course, going right back to Pictish times. So
that's
interesting book for the family.
well, that's extraordinary. And I think a lot of, especially Americans here, we're very interested in our history and our roots. And I think it's mostly because our country is not very old. And most especially if you have a Scottish surname, I think everyone's just very fascinated and with Scottish history and culture, and it's sort of a romantic thing, hence Outlander, right? But it's extraordinary that you've done all this research. Do you have a favorite sort of relative or a surprise that you've come across, or somebody who might be the most interesting or fascinating thing or shocking or surprising things for you in your research?
I've got to say, not too many. The vast majority of my family, going right back, have been drovers, farmers, labourers. That's been their careers for the vast majority of them. Hardworking Scots and British people. That's what they've been, just hardworking, average people. It's interesting, in the last 15 years, I've got very much into tracing family through DNA, which is a very interesting subject to get into, because it's got nothing to do with clan association as such, because clans are about, and always were about, where you lived, who you worked for, who the local chief was, who you associated to. So not everyone was always by that name. They could be by anybody's name, but they worked there, or they lived there on their land, or they married into the family and became part of that clan. DNA is not like that. DNA is about direct scientific information about who you are actually related to by blood, which is a totally different science, but very, very interesting. And I found out that my family aren't Celtic. We're not from any of the original clans and tribes, because my direct ancestors seem to have, going by DNA, walked over from Europe into Britain when it wasn't flooded still, before just at the end of the last ice age, 8 to 10,000 years ago, they walked across when it was still land into the British Isles, and were hunter-gatherers walking around, living off the land and living off animals and moving around the country a lot before there was an England, Scotland or Wales. It was just one land piece at the end of the Ice Age. And for some reason, they never invented the boat, so they couldn't get off again once the water came. So they've been stuck on the island for the last 8,000 years. That's the only way I can really describe it, because I think they would have got out otherwise. So yeah, we've been here since the beginning, really, since the end of the Ice Age anyway. And from that point on, every group of people coming into the British Isles, we've assimilated with and joined in with and married into and become part of whatever culture has come into the country for the last 10,000 years. And so when the Scots went into Scotland and came, the majority of them came from either Scandinavia or Europe, and different tribes moving in, different cultures moving in. My family was already there. And so they just blended in, mixed in with them, and took on their culture and moved forward as we do today. So it's interesting, but my DNA doesn't seem to match any of the clan tribes. It's much older in these islands. It's been there before and still there. So a lot of the clan tribes do derive from Scandinavia, or have a lot of Scandinavian within them, and man hasn't. It's I think the DNA, as far as I can make out, is something like 90% Britain and something like 2% what is now Spain, and very little else. And I
Wow.
think as hunter-gatherers, they travelled from Eastern Europe, and they came out from Croatia and that area and marched into Europe over thousands of years and slowly came into Britain. So it's interesting.
It's fascinating. I've heard, I don't know if it's true, that some of the original Celts came from Spain. I don't know if that's true or not.
Yeah, absolutely. When the Europeans moved into Europe from Eastern Europe, they settled in what was then Iberia, north of Spain, and settled there. And I don't blame them. The weather's good. And then slowly, the tribes and the individuals, as hunter-gatherers, moved further up and covered all of Europe and then into the British Isles and Scandinavia. So yes, that's correct. Some did come from northern Spain. That's why a lot of Celtic people do have. We call it Spanish now. It's not really Spanish. Spanish weren't there. It's Iberian within their DNA.
Can you tell us just a little bit about, going back to the spelling and your particular surname being spelled with the K? And we oftentimes have a lot of Americans come in to this association tent or one of the clan tents and asking about, the spelling of their names. The names are spelled so vastly differently across the planet. I mean, some are very similar, some are not. We always wondered if the reason for that was because some people, were forced to leave maybe Scotland after the last Jacobite uprising. They only spoke Gaelic. Many didn't read or write. And then they wound up going to places where they maybe didn't know how to spell the names. I don't know. What can you tell us about spellings and the different variations. That seems to be a question we get often, the different variations of spelling.
Yeah, no, I mean, it is interesting. I mean, yes, with I'll give a quick brief history of why the Clan Phail exists, and it's obviously to support and represent those with the name of MacPhail, and that's spelled Phail. So it's MacPhail. There are 70 different variations on that spelling, on that word, 70.
Wow.
There's probably more, but I know of 70. MacPhail means Mac in Gaelic, in Scots, Irish, means son of. So it's, and Phail means Paul in English. So it's the son of Paul. The problem with the Clan Phail is it depends what Paul that was, the son of, because it could be Paul of a few different Scottish clans. The MacBains, for instance, some of themselves called themselves MacPhail because they had a parent or the chief called Paul. So descendants from them were called MacPhail, but they were MacBains. And this happened quite a bit. So it's very difficult with MacPhails because unlike McIntosh, which is son of the chief, Macpherson's son of the parson, yeah, they're all dedicated single families that are identifiable. MacPhails are slightly different because it does depend who the Paul was originally. And in Scotland, people didn't have surnames until the 1600s, really. Definitely the late 1500s to early 1600s. They didn't have surnames. So they just went by their first names, and everyone knew them by John or Paul or Cindi. Although I don't think there was too many Cindys, but there might have been an odd one. and so they were known by their first name. So if you were the son of them, then you would take their name and use it as your surname. So I'd be, in my case, John, son of Derek. So John Derrickson. So that's how it worked. So it's very difficult. It's only when clans started to, well, to be fair, it's probably when the government, and especially later on the English government, started to tax people and wanted to identify them for purposes of getting money out of them and knowing who they were. So it probably started around that period where they start to have a surname. And so roughly the late 1500s, early 1600s are when people started to have a name to go with them for documents and everything else. Before that, nobody cared. So yeah, we've got 70 different spellings from MacPhail to Paulson, because again, Paul's son, Paulson. That's a one that definitely comes from the Mackays. They use Paulson. Mackfall, MCFALL or MACFALL. That's a very popular one. There's a lot of Mackfalls in America and Canada, a lot. And Ireland, a lot. And don't believe all this stuff that you see sometimes on websites where they say, oh, Mackfall with FALL is Irish and MacPhail is Scottish, or Mac with MC is Irish and MAC is Scottish. It's not true. They can be anything. And the Irish and the Scots are very related. They're very, very close. A lot of Scots went to live in Ireland and their culture went with them. It's as simple as that. And of course, there was a Gaelic culture there well before that. So there's a big mixture. There really is. So yeah, there's literally 70 different spellings. So it's anyone that can identify as one of them spellings is part of the Clan Phail society. We welcome them all. We're probably one of the only societies. We've been going now. I started the society in 1990. I started it then, and the following grew and grew, and it got to a point around about 2000 where there's only so much information you can put out to people and charge them for. So we took the democratic decision to stop taking membership finances, taking money for membership off them. Anyone by the name or has an interest in it can be a member of the society. You are a member just by literally being a MacPhail or a Mackfall, etc. You're a member of that society, and you have the right to that information as far as we're concerned. So we don't charge for it. We give it out freely. We tell people what's what. We did have a website until recently, and it was hijacked by someone in Indonesia and turned into a completely different site. So we lost that completely.
Oh my
And we're presently redrafting a new one. Very kindly, the chief of McBain is who does websites. He's helping me create a website for the Clan Phail once again, and we'll get all that information back online for anyone to get. It's there for everybody. We don't believe in charging for anything. We do have a Facebook page, which is the only one that's been keeping us going for the last couple of years. We have a Facebook page, which is literally Clan Phail Society. And that's there for everyone to log into and join on and read all the information. We update people as much as possible what's happening within the Clan Chattan Association and Clan Phail. So yeah, that's the kind of background for where the Clan Phail Society started. My part in Clan Chattan Association, and a basic about the names and going back in history. The interesting part, I think, also is Clan Phail isn't a huge clan in history. It's always been there. In fact, it's been there since the earliest times of clans, because we were one of the original Clan Chattan clans in the west of Scotland before the McIntosh was involved with them and they moved across to the east. So the McPhersons, the McBains, the Cattanachs, who were all closely related in the original Clan Chattan in the west of Scotland. And then slowly, because the new chief became McIntosh, through marriage, the Clan Chattan moved to the east, to Inverness area and to that area. But many MacPhails at that time didn't go. The vast majority went across and moved. But would you really, if you were just a worker, would you really give up your house, your land, and just walk across to the other side of the country to live under a new chief if you didn't have to? No, you wouldn't. So the vast majority did stay behind, and many of them then took protection from Cameron and Campbell further down the country. So they're the three main clans that MacPhails belong to. There are some in Campbell, and there are some in Cameron in the west, and the others under Clan Chattan in the east. However, there's a fourth clan as well, which comes under the Mackays, and they developed from the second son of the chief of Mackay, and there's many MacPhails and Paulsons who affiliated to the Mackays, and they're not related in blood at all to the others. Totally separate.
And aren't the Mackays up above the Black Isle in the Sutherland area? If I'm
Sutherland,
mistaken.
in Sutherland, yes.
Yeah, that's incredible, that the spread of where people would go to. And so, did any of your family follow? Is that why you're part of Clan Chattan Association? Did your family follow over to the McIntoshes when they went into the Inverness area? And those
That's right, absolutely. Yeah, they went across. Well, I can only presume my direct family went across. My family may have already been there. I don't know. There's no way of knowing that. You can only find that out through obviously history books, and there's nothing in there about that. Or from DNA and where they're found in the past, but there's nothing that identifies exactly where people are. Just an area. So I would tend to think my direct ancestor was either already round Strathnairn area and round Inverness area, or they moved across. I think probably, likely, common sense says they were probably already there and became part of the landowners and the families over there. The Chiefly family, which I'm not part of as far as I'm aware, the Chiefly family of MacPhail did move across, they came across in the 1291, I think it was. They started to all move across slowly across to the east, and they did move across, and they settled in a very small hamlet in Strathnairn called Inverarney, and that's the chiefly area for the MacPhails of Clan Chattan. The thing is, when you walk through Strathnairn now, the whole of the valley all the way through to Moy is basically deserted. It's rocks. It's not good farmland. It's very overgrown. It's been abandoned to sheep for the last 200 years, mainly because of the highland clearances. When you actually look at the older maps and the ones that were done in the 1700s, the place was full of people. There was villages all over that don't exist now, villages that were documented with names that are no longer there. And there's just piles of rubble every now and again to identify there was something there. They cleared them all out. They just cleared the plot out and put sheep on. And that was the end of it, really, at that point.
It was such a sad period of time for the Scots and in Scottish history. And you often wonder, what things would have looked like. There's not a lot of any reference guides during that time. But it would be very interesting to have some sort of an idea of, how they lived and how their life was and what the land looked like and what they were able to build.
Yeah, the Clan Chattan lands, Strathnairn mainly, it's nothing like it was 200 and 300 years ago. It just doesn't resemble it because the buildings aren't there. It's just rocks everywhere. I've got to say, it's not the best farmland in the world. It really isn't. You have to go closer to Moy to find a bit better farmland. So I think farming was what they could grow, how they could do that. There's plenty of water. They had never had a shortage of water. They're surrounded by it everywhere. And I'm sure, like it does now, it rains most days. So, and things grow quite fast because of that. So I don't think there's a problem with living in water. But yeah, food, I think, would have been mainly animals and what crops they could grow, where they could grow them. I think it would have been a hard life. I don't think it'd be easy. Like many crofters today who live on the Outer Hebrides, etc. It's a hard life. And I don't think it would have been very much different then.
No, I can't imagine that either. I spent some time after Moy, going to Moy this past year out in the Outer Hebridean Islands, and I've been there before, and it is you when one travels out there, and I visited some of the crofts, you just have to think what a hard life it would have been, before electricity and technology and the modern comforts. How tough each day must have been just to feed themselves and provide shelter for their family. So it's fascinating too.
I think so. I think anywhere living above Perth in Scotland 200 years ago must have been the hardest life possible. England was totally different. England was very arable. It was very farming. There was a lot of people. It was very industrial later on. It was totally different. But the north of Scotland, in the Highlands, that was a tough life. I think it's probably a tough life now, to be fair. And if they didn't have cars to get them around to where they need to go, I think it'd be nearly impossible life. But people still live there and they still enjoy life, and it's the most beautiful scenery in the world, probably.
It is beautiful. I absolutely love exploring every little nook and cranny that I can. I've been up to Cape Wrath, taken the 500, and it is very windy and very barren sometimes. And but it is stunningly beautiful. And but let's talk about your other books as well. So we just saw your family book a little earlier. You've written other books as well. Can we talk about
There's
those?
that one there, which is probably the um, most read book I've written anyway. That is just the history of Clan Phail from the earliest times to modern times. It gives as much as information as there is out there, because what I did was I spent 25 years gathering the information for it. So I went and read every book there was. I got in touch with all the libraries and all the archives and asked permission to reprint what they've got about the MacPhails, and had it all put into this one book. So it's literally all the information that I've ever found that is on the families is in that book. And there's some American families in there as well. Very kind that some people in America wrote me got me some articles from America, and they were also published in there. I believe somewhere, and I couldn't, top of my head, I can't remember where, probably North Carolina area, I'm not 100% certain. There is actually a MacPhail County. I've
Oh,
never been there, but I know that.
you know,
So somewhere in
well,
America, there's a Phail County.
we should find it. I know I found out there's a McIntosh County in Georgia. And when I went to the Stone Mountain Highland Games, which we just published a video of those games, I couldn't believe how many Macintoshes there were. There's a whole pipe band. There's Macintoshes everywhere, and apparently a lot settled there. And one of them married one of the Native American chiefs. So it's interesting. It's a whole part of Clan MacIntosh I've never explored. So we should find where the MacPhails have been or the Phails have been, and I'll go find it and I'll
Yeah.
video it
I
and
mean,
send.
there's many reasons why most clan people left Scotland, because it's quite clear there's many more Highlanders live outside of Scotland than live in Scotland. I mean, obviously, and they left for many reasons. One, when the clearance was on and the government armies were clearing all the Highlands out to put sheep on and get rid of these horrible, nasty people that were always rebelling and never agreeing with the government, you know, especially after Culloden, and they cleared them all out. It was mass extinction of them all. We're going to take your civilization away. They even banned them from playing the bagpipes for something like 10 to 15 years. They weren't even allowed to play the bagpipes. They weren't allowed to carry arms. Anyone in the Highlands caught carrying arms could be imprisoned. It was hard, and a lot of people obviously were moved out at that point. A lot of people were killed. A lot of people were moved out. There's records of many Highlanders been sent to Canada and America as slaves. They had to do an indenture for a minimum of 2 years as slaves in reality. They had no rights whatsoever, and eventually they were allowed to buy themselves out of it if they could ever afford it. And so many went to America and Canada on that basis. I'm not comparing them to the struggles that African slaves went through in the slightest, but they were classed in the same category and sent across for exactly the same purpose. So it's very, very difficult. And then later on, many moved out of the north of Scotland because it was hard to live and they wanted a better life. And so many got the boat across to Canada, mainly Canada. A lot went to Canada, started Canada, and moved themselves down into America. Some went to Australia or were sent to Australia. I had family in New Zealand, but I think they went by choice. And yeah, that's how most Scottish people got across to America and Canada. Is they either were forced to go there or they went voluntarily to get work and have a better life, which has proved great for America and Canada, because I think America and Canada was built on Scottish ingenuity and intelligence, and they've developed so many things and invented so many things. The Irish went across, of course, many Irish went across. Irish tended to go across as labourers, and many of them were labourers across there and physically built America and Canada. The Scots went across to be more inventing things and devising ways of doing things easier.
Yeah, so a lot of
If that
it.
makes sense.
A lot of the Irish were very involved building the railroads in the West as well. I mean, they built a lot of things here. But I know, as I understand, from 1746 to 1782, the bagpipes wearing of tartan was banned, carrying of any weapon was banned. Speaking of Gaelic, which also, as I understand it, I could be wrong, no one spoke English. They only spoke Gaelic pretty much prior to that. And then all of a sudden it was banned. And for the first offense, people were imprisoned for 6 months. And if you lived through
Yeah,
that, a second offense was deportation, but many people didn't make it out of prison alive. It was just such a tough time for Scotland and Scottish history. But in the south of the United States, which I just got back from, it's wonderful to see the influence all over the southern of the United States. As you were saying, we were talking about, there are many counties named after Scottish people. Scottish country dancing in the form of square dancing, they call it square dancing. In the South, you see the bluegrass bands. Only they decided to go ahead and add a banjo in the South of the United States into those bands. But that's like a Cayley band. It's the music's very similar, and you can see
yeah,
the similarities in the fiddle. So it's very fascinating to travel through the south of the US and see the culture, the Scottish culture represented throughout the South. And so
yeah.
I can't wait to read. You're sending me a new version of your book. Read it cover.
Posted it this morning.
Oh, thank you. We will read it cover to cover, and hopefully we can go over more of it here together and let people know. I'm going to be making playlists for each of the clan here on this YouTube channel, so that people, I think there's so many people, there's 350 million roughly Americans. And I know that there's right about 7 million people that live in Scotland. So there's so many Americans here. We're scattered across a vast area of land, and there's people that aren't able to travel to Scotland. Most maybe can make it to one or two of the Highland games. And so it's tough to connect really with your roots unless you have the ability of traveling. And so I thought, what a great way to really connect with everyone and learn more about history and the history of not just the association and what was the Confederation of Clan Hatton, but also the individual clans themselves, and really getting to know the true history. There's a lot out there on the internet, and there's a lot of inaccuracies. I myself, have been misinformed about a great many things. So I do enjoy learning all the time. And maybe we can do that here together from time to time.
I've got one more book that
Yeah,
I've mentioned, which is, well, not that one, this one. I have to stand up, otherwise you can't see it because of the background. I still can't see it. 1 minute. No, that's not doing very well.
your love. Well, if you send me a
There,
picture, oh, there it is.
there. And that one is it's called Your Ever-Loving Son. It's letters from the front. So what it is this is probably my biggest book, because I was very fortunate that one of my grandmother's brother was in the First World War, very sadly. And it's his life story from being born to his death in the trenches. And fortunately, my grandmother kept all his letters from the front. And so I had a wad of original letters that he handwrote and sent back home from the First World War in the trenches in Ypres and around there. And he had an amazing life, but very short. 22 he was killed, and his body was never found. He was one of those missing soldiers in the trenches that they never found the body. These are all these letters from the front, and they're interesting reading. So what I did was I copied them all into the book and translated them, because it's handwritten, all of it, and it's all in there about everything that was happening at the time, which was devastating and a horrible war, and shouldn't have happened. But that's history, and but there's a little bit of history there written in with all his letters of how he was doing. I think a lot of the time he was putting on a brave front so his family wouldn't get worried. He was regularly asking for flea powder and things to kill the insects and fleas and things like that. So that was a hard time for everybody.
That's unimaginable. Is there any passage in that book that, not to put you on the spot, that you'd like to read? or be comfortable reading?
No, not really. The whole,
Well, let's,
to be fair, the whole book's interesting because it's always letters about everything. You know, he's saying what happened while he was there, and you know, it's there's so much of it, to be honest. But yeah,
where can people find these books to purchase them?
only from me. They used to be out in shops, but time went on, and I decided I'd just print them, get them printed out, and sell them myself again. They're all published, they're all out there, but they're hard to find. So now what I just do is anybody who wants one through the Clan Phail Facebook site, I sell them through there, let them go. But
Okay. Everyone, we
yeah,
will go ahead and put that link in the description down below. So join the Clan Phail Facebook page so you can keep up with John and all things Clan Phail. And please remember to like and subscribe here as we put out more content, and let us know what more you would like to see. It's important to us to understand what is fascinating to you and what you'd like to hear from John. I feel like I could talk to you, John, for hours and hours and just listen to all of your research and things that you have learned and seen in your lifetime. And thank you so much for making these compilations of history and going to all the trouble of traveling around, visiting all of the different churches. And I don't know if any libraries were involved, but just everywhere you've gone to piece together the history, because so much of Highland history unfortunately has been lost. There's some there and some not. And a lot of times I'll go to a church, or I've been to a church where I thought I might find something, and just to find out that the church burned down with all the archives at a certain year. And that's all too often the case, unfortunately. So you have done a great work and a great service to Clan Phail and also to the Clan Chattan Association.
to be fair, I could spend another six of these happy meetings explaining many other things. There's so much more to discuss. I mean, there really is. There's just a ton of stuff. One place, if anyone does manage to get to the Inverness area and travel there, the one place to go for interest for MacPhails, MacGillivray's, Shaws is Dunlickety Churchyard. It's a very small church in, well, near Tordarroch and Inverarney in Strathnairn, just about 8 miles outside Inverness. And it's a little church in the middle of nowhere, but it's got plaques up. The plaque behind me, that's up on the wall. The church itself is now actually been sold off privately. The churchyard is still open. And so the enclosures for the chiefs of MacGillivray and Shaw, they have their chiefs buried there. It's worth a visit because that's where the history and everyone in that area gathered, and that's their place that they all met up at. But it's been sold off now, and I think it's a visitor centre for the area. There's nothing clan related in the visitor centre, I understand, but I understand it's now a visitor centre for the rural community around that area. But definitely worth a visit if you get a chance.
That's wonderful. And maybe you and I don't know if you're planning to go to Moy this year in August, but I will go, and maybe we can go together, or at least go, and I will film it for everyone to be able to see, for those who can't make it in person. I myself would love to go, and why not be able to share it here? And you let me know anytime you want to come on here and talk about Clan Phail, and we'll put some things together as often as possible, and as often as you are able. We'd love to have you come back on. I feel like I'm the microphone for Clan Chattan Association and all of the 12 clans. I am by no means an expert on anything, and I'm learning myself, and love to have you come on, and other members as well, to help not only connect people from around the world, but educate people from around the world. And thank you so much for making time to do that with us.
Thank you very much. Thank you. That's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And we will see you hopefully very soon, John MacPhail.
Adios.